The camera zooms in on his face. Tears stream down his cheeks. He sobs as the judge reads the verdict. And on the live stream, the chat is exploding. He truly regrets it. That can't be a lie. Maybe he's not a monster after all. It is one of the oldest and most powerful emotional reflexes of human social nature. We see tears, and our brain automatically, involuntarily, and with deep-seated certainty, interprets them as proof of inner truth. But forensic psychology tells a different story, one that is far more uncomfortable for most people than the emotional certainty triggered by a crying face. Tears in the courtroom are one of the most frequently and consequentially misinterpreted human behaviors in existence. And today, we're going to analyze, layer by layer, what really lies behind those tears, the psychological mechanisms that drive them, and why you are almost never seeing what you think you're seeing. First and foremost is the distinction between affective and instrumental crying. Affective crying is an immediate, spontaneous, uncontrolled physiological response to an authentic emotional state. It originates in the brain's limbic system, the evolutionarily ancient region that generates emotions before the conscious mind even has a chance to intervene. When someone cries because a loved one died unexpectedly, that is affective crying. It has a biological, involuntary basis, one that cannot be simply switched on or off. Instrumental crying, on the other hand, is a form of emotional behavior designed to serve a social purpose. It communicates a message to an audience. It targets a specific reaction from observers, and this reaction benefits the crying individual in some way. Instrumental crying can be completely unconscious, semi-conscious, or in certain cases, entirely calculated. What forensic psychology has established with absolute certainty is that in high-stakes contexts, such as a criminal court, tears are far less reliable as a sign of authentic remorse than our intuitive judgment leads us to believe. The second mechanism is what forensic psychologists describe as narcissistic injury, or egocentric distress. Many criminals who cry in court are doing so sincerely. Their pain is real. But what is actually causing them to suffer? Psychological analyses of self-reports from convicted criminals consistently show that the leading cause of courtroom tears is not the victim's suffering. It is their own suffering due to the consequences. The impending incarceration, the public collapse of a carefully curated social facade, the destruction of their self-image as someone who is completely in control. These forms of pain are genuine. The tears they produce are not faked. However, they indicate a completely self-absorbed suffering that has absolutely nothing to do with genuine empathy for the victim. A person who experiences true remorse directs their pain outward, focusing on the impact of their actions on others. Narcissistic pain, on the other hand, is always, without exception, directed inward at oneself. If this level of psychological analysis is what you're after, subscribe to the channel right now. We release weekly analyses with this exact level of forensic and clinical depth. And leave a like to help this video reach a wider audience. The third factor is the strategic use of tears as a calculated tool for the defense. This is not speculation. It is documented practice. In numerous high-profile cases, defendants and their defense counsel have actively discussed during trial preparation how to use emotional displays in court to sway the jury and the judge. The psychological logic behind this is simple yet extraordinarily effective. Tears activate what social psychology calls empathetic compliance in observers. This is the brain's hardwired tendency to lessen punishment for someone who is visibly and intensely suffering. This tendency evolved to de-escalate conflicts within human communities. In a modern criminal court, this ancient neurobiological system is exploited with deliberate intent. A landmark study conducted at the University of Amsterdam yielded one of the most striking findings. Defendants who cried during their trial received on average significantly lighter sentences than comparable defendants who showed no emotional outbursts, regardless of the objective severity of their alleged crimes. The fourth mechanism is cognitive dissonance and its emotional resolution through the collapse of the internal legitimization system. Many people who commit crimes have shielded their self-esteem with an elaborate system of internal justifications. I had no other choice. He drove me to it. Society never gave me a fair chance. This system of internal legitimization keeps cognitive dissonance, the friction between seeing oneself as a good person and the reality of the harm they've caused, in a delicate balance. But when the verdict is delivered in open court, this entire system of self-deception is publicly, institutionally, and irreversibly shattered. For a person who has spent years maintaining a carefully constructed inner narrative that deflected responsibility, this moment can trigger a genuine and intense emotional crisis. The tears shed in this moment are neurologically real, but they flow from the pain of a shattered self-image, not from remorse for the victim's suffering. Leave a comment below. Is there a famous case where you watched a defendant cry in court and wondered if their tears were genuine? Share your thoughts in the comments. Our fifth factor concerns the complex phenomenon of emotional mimicry in psychopathic personalities. There is a specific category of criminals, namely those with psychopathic personalities, who, according to current scientific understanding, lack the capacity for effective empathy. Yet, many of them cry in the courtroom. This apparent paradox disappears once you understand how psychopaths learn and deploy emotional expressions throughout their lives. Individuals with psychopathic traits develop an early and remarkably precise ability to observe, analyze, and replicate emotionally relevant behaviors. They do this not because they feel the underlying emotions, but because they have learned that displaying certain expressions in specific social contexts yields the desired response from those around them. However, what they cannot replicate under close scrutiny is the complete physiological pattern that accompanies genuine emotional arousal. Authentic tears are accompanied by distinct changes in breathing, flushing of the face and neck, micro-tensions in the body, and residual exhaustion. Instrumental or mimetic tears almost always lack one or more of these physiological markers. While these subtle cues are obvious to a trained forensic psychologist, they remain virtually invisible to a jury, or to the millions of viewers watching behind a screen. Finally, the sixth factor is the cultural lens through which we view tears, a bias that systematically leads to miscarriages of justice. In Western culture, a public tear is a powerful currency. It communicates humanity, moral awareness, and authenticity. We have spent generations learning to equate tears with truth. The danger lies in how we apply this bias in court. In a courtroom, the conditions are artificial and the stakes are absolute. The defendant has every incentive to project a specific image. Their freedom, their reputation, and their entire future are on the line. Yet, jurors, ordinary citizens without forensic psychology training, evaluate emotional expressions in this high-pressure environment using the exact same cultural filters they would use in an everyday conversation. This psychological miscalibration is why legal systems around the world are so easily swayed by emotional performances that have absolutely nothing to do with the facts. Share this video right now with anyone in the legal field, law enforcement, or anyone who closely follows true crime. Spreading awareness of these psychological mechanisms is vital for a fairer justice system. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. So, where does this leave us? With an important caveat: not all tears in the courtroom are instrumental or manipulative. Genuine remorse exists. Real pain over the suffering caused exists. There are defendants who weep because they truly grasp the gravity of the harm they've inflicted on another human being. These cases are real, but they are far rarer than the emotional spectacle in the courtroom suggests. Telling the difference between authentic and performance-based tears requires more than just empathy. It requires analysis. It requires a willingness to challenge the comfortable assumption that tears equal truth. The fundamental question is never, are they crying? It is always, what are they actually crying for? Tears almost never tell the whole story. Behavior does. there is a final, practical implication of this analysis that directly targets the legal system. One that forensic psychologists have been emphasizing for decades. Jurors and judges require formal training in the psychology of emotional expressions before they preside over criminal trials. This isn't a theoretical ideal. It's a critical necessity backed by decades of research. Studies consistently show that untrained jurors systematically misjudge the credibility of statements and the authenticity of emotions in high-stakes situations. The emotional intelligence we use in daily life is simply not equipped to filter out calculated self-presentation in a high-stakes courtroom. Closing this gap is not a matter of efficiency. It is a matter of justice. One final observation before we conclude this analysis. This debate isn't just about high-profile trials that dominate the headlines. It is relevant to every situation where we, as a society, are called upon to judge the credibility of someone claiming to take responsibility and feel remorse. Political apologies, corporate damage control after a major scandal, personal apologies after deep betrayals in relationships. In each of these scenarios, we instinctively prioritize emotional displays over behavioral track records. And that bias is a dangerous mistake. A person's consistent actions over time are an invariably more reliable indicator of their character than a single, emotionally charged moment. Keep that in mind. Always, share this video with those around you who are interested in criminal psychology and courtroom trials. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell for our weekly analyses. The psychological insights you gain today are a tool. Use them.